In gesture drawing, we will be mostly involved with drawing the human figure, and the human figure is three-dimensional being that can twist, bend, and stretch into all kinds of positions that may make it seem difficult to draw if we don't know how to approach it. I've learned some rules of perspective from Walt Stanchfield, who previously learned them from Bruce McIntyre, who came up with a shorthand for teaching kids. They laid out the rules simply as surface, size, surface plus size, overlap, surface lines, and foreshortening. Over the years, I've continually integrated these principles into my gesture drawing, and now I don't even need to think about them anymore when drawing. They naturally flow into my pieces now because of that continued practice of using them. Now, out of context, it may be hard to see how these can improve your gesture drawing, so let me explain some more with some visual examples. So for the first rule, let me use an example of two pairs that are on a surface. Both pairs are the same size and are interacting with the surface on the same plane because they are clearly in line with each other. The image basically looks like two similar sized pairs next to each other. Now for the second rule, let's make one of the pairs smaller but still interacting with the surface on the same plane. The image now just looks like a small pair next to a big pair. Now for the third rule, it's basically a combination of the first two rules. What if you took the smaller pair and drew it interacting with a different area of the surface? Now we have created the illusion of two pairs of the same size, but one is closer to us and one is further away from us. This created the feeling of depth in a two-dimensional drawing. It's the same with the feet of a character standing on a surface. The character's feet are interacting with the surface at different points, and the left leg is further away, so the size will be smaller. Let's move on to the next principle, overlap. In this drawing, we can clearly see that her hair is overlapping her face, her hand is overlapping her hair, and her right leg is overlapping her left leg. Being very clear with your overlaps will help your drawings read much more clearly. Sometimes when overlap isn't clearly defined, it can create tangents. We'll talk about tangents a little later on, so just keep that at the back of your head for now. Here's an example of two subjects without overlap. The clarity and depth is immediately lost without the overlap. Once we add the overlap, we can clearly see which object is in front and which is at the back. It's the same with body parts. We will explore this some more after we talk about the next rules, which is surface lines. Now when we look at paintings, there are so many elements that contribute to the emphasis of depth. But in line drawings, we don't have all the same tools in our toolbox. And because of that, when we are drawing the human figure, we need to use what we can, whether that be sleeves, socks, belt, wrinkles, etc. Now, when we are drawing surface lines, you may wonder in which direction do I draw the surface lines to create the right perspective. It all comes down to the pose and the direction in which the body or body parts are pointing in. In this example, the direction of the arms and legs are vital in representing the three-dimensionality of the drawing by dictating the way we draw the surface lines. The leg that is pointed towards us, the surface line will be drawn based on this direction. For example, and the legs and arms that are pointing away from us, the surface lines will be drawn like this. The previous elements such as surface plus size and overlap would dictate the position and the size of the limbs, and the overlap will show which leg is in front of the other. Let's move on now to doing some more demonstrations so I could show you how I integrate them into my gesture drawing. Okay guys, so let's do a little demonstration of the rules of perspective in action. Here we have a little reference image we're going to use of a woman in action. She has a nice silhouette, and before we get into the rules of perspective, let's do a little recap of the previous lesson with the line of action, right? So let's do a quick identification of her line of action, and we can see how her body is moving and just pick up that quick energy of her line of action. I'm just gonna join the feet because could see that energy mainly going through here and coming out here. Alright, and if we wanted to put in the arms, just put in the arms. So you could see that quick line of action there. So as I said before, like once you get really good at identifying the line of action, you won't even need to like draw it in or anything. It'll just come naturally to you. So let's get into this lesson now. So I'm gonna draw her, and as I draw, I will explain how I am applying the rules of perspective in the different areas, and maybe how I like use them in reviewing the sketch and stuff. So let's do this. So I always start with the head. I actually never start with any other body part because the head is such a good place to start, because to me it's like the foundation of a house. Like you don't start with the roof and then work your way down. You start with the foundation and work your way up, right? So the head is like that to me. So we could clearly see that her head is kind of overlapping her neck. We can barely see her neck. So that's one overlap there. Alright. I'm gonna draw in the torso. See, I'm already using surface lines. Remember when I said sometimes you may need to use the clothes to signify surface lines, right? So we could get that volume, right? So we already hit 2 rules of perspective. Again, we're using some overlap here. Made a little bit of an error there. And at first I kind of try to say really loose and really sketchy. I don't try to be too clean, because then I tend to stiffen up and focus on anatomy, which is not what this class is about. It's about the gesture. So you're focusing on the gesture. And then you could always, it doesn't matter like how sketchy you are, like you could always drop another layer onto the piece and clean it up. So there's no need to be like perfect right out of the gate. If you need to be rough, be rough. Right. Right. So we have her head blocking her neck. Let me just do something quick for her face. Right. You could see that her hair is overlapping the hand and is in front of the hand. So we'll take note of that when we clean it up. So we have her chest here, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use her top to signify the volume, because we have some, we could use it as the surface lines, and we could show how her body is curving, right? So here we could see how the volume of her body, because of the way the top is wrapping around her body, right? We could see that. And the same thing by her waist here. We could see how it's wrapping around her body. And her ankle, we could see that there too, right? So you have like these little creases, these little curves. in these areas where you see how the body is bending. Now, this arm here, I want you to take a closer look at it. This arm is actually pulling back away from us. If you look really closely, and you could notice that from the stretches under her arm here, it's pulling backwards in that direction, right? It's going away from us, right? It's not coming towards us. So the lower part of the arm would be smaller. Let me draw this hand a little clearer. And even the palm of her hand is pointing away from us. So the surface lines would be drawn. Like if I were to draw the surface lines on these, they would point like this way, because the hand is pulling away, right? You could always clean up that later, right? It's the same thing with this palm, right? This palm is moving away from us. Alright. So when we draw the creases in the hand, the surface lines would be that way. The surface lines would be like this, not like this. Right? They would move in this direction. Because if you draw them like this, they would give you the wrong sense of perspective. They're pointing away from us, not coming towards us, right? And even these areas here, we could use them to indicate the direction of the curvature of the body. And the same with the wrinkles. Notice the wrinkles. And now in her buttocks area here, you could see, continuing from the leg, that this buttocks is in front of this one. So we have the overlap showing there, right? So let's kind of break down this piece now. Let's look at it and see. Okay, so we have a bunch of overlap. We have overlap here. Her head is overlapping her hand. We have her head overlapping her neck. All right. We have this leg overlapping here, so we can clearly see that this leg is in front of this leg. We have some surface lines here indicating how the body is curving. All these are surface lines, right? What else can we notice in the rules of perspective? We have size, right? Because we have this arm, right? It's larger in this area here, and as it pulls away, it gets smaller. So we have size here as well, right? Same thing with these fingers. What else do we have that's clearly used? So we have surface, we have size, we have overlap, we have surface lines, right? So let's do another example. Okay, let's look at this example. Now this one is a bit more trickier. There's a lot of foreshortening, there's a lot of overlap, a lot of surface lines. So let's get into it. Now again, I always start with the head because it's a really good anchor point to start with. And then I get like a good area to work out from. And well, from here we could see that his hoodie is overlapping his neck, so we can't really see his neck. But I'm not gonna draw the hoodie just yet. I'm gonna focus on the torso, right? And I'm using the surface lines of the hoodie to indicate how I wanna move his torso. right? And from the torso, I'm going to go into the leg. So you can see the 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 stages I'm taking to draw this kind of follow the line of action. Because his line of action comes like this. It kind of goes in like that, comes in. So that's why I decided to draw his leg first. Right, and now we're gonna have some overlap here. His left leg is blocking his right leg. And now we'll draw this arm. Now there's gonna be some foreshortening here, so I'm gonna use overlap and size to draw this. You could see this part of the arm is closer to us, so it would overlap the part of the arm that's further away. So I use overlap to help me break down the foreshortening, right? And there's overlap here, so we want some foreshortening, so we're gonna use overlap, foreshortening, and size to help with this one. So you see the rules of perspective are dominant in doing gestures of the human figure. Very, very dominant. Now let's just draw in the skateboard. Which also has foreshortening and overlap. The wheels are overlapping. So even in the stationary object there's the overlap. This wheel is overlapping the axle, and then the axle is overlapping the wheel that is further away. Same for the front. Very, very simple. Like, not going to go too detailed into it. Now, for his head, we have a series of overlap here. So we have the hat overlapping his head, plus surface, because the hat is wrapping around his head. So that's the surface lines. Alright, and then we have the hair overlapping all this here. Now, the face has a bunch of overlap, because the nose is overlapping his right side of his face. So we're not going to see that side of his face. Alright? Now we're getting into the hoodie. Now the hair is overlapping the hoodie, so it's behind the hair. Alright? Now what I'm gonna make an adjustment here. His head is more pushed forward, so I'm gonna pull back his chest some more and bring back his body this way, because there's a bit of a twist in his body. And you know what? I'm gonna reposition this here. It's a good thing about digital. Now, if we look at the jeans, we can see that the wrinkles are kind of showing the form. But I don't want to put in all the wrinkles, because then it gets too clustered and too complicated. So I'm just gonna add in just maybe the pocket, and then a few wrinkles there and there. So you're getting the basic idea of it. I think I'm gonna do over the legs because a bit of foreshortening error there. Kind of made them a bit too long. So like anytime you're having trouble with perspective, try and see if one of the rules of surface line or size and overlap could help you break it down and just break it down into those simple rules and see how you handle it. And it's all about practicing. So what I'm doing here is that I find the silhouette could be improved. Like here it's a bit bunched up, so I'm gonna just make a small adjustment and pull this leg out from there a bit so you can see it more instead of it being lined up totally with that leg, right? Making the adjustments. And don't be afraid to be sketchy, as I said before. You could always clean up after. Right? And thinking the angle of the hand could be drawn better. I want to pull it back some more and maybe foreshorten it some more. And the overlap with the close. Here we have the surface lines, you know. So there we go. We have this here, and you could see this one was full of the rules of perspective. We have the surface lines here with the close showing the direction of the perspective. We have a bunch of foreshortening here with the arm. Let me indicate that with a different color. Right, foreshortening, overlap, size, because you can see because the actual palm of his hand is closer to us, it's larger and it's overlapping. So you can see the overlap here, overlap right here with the green and the red. And it'll be the same with here. So you have the size, foreshortening. As it moves away, it gets smaller. Yeah, and even with the overlap with the hat is overlapping the head, and the hat is even overlapping itself. There's an overlap here and there where the tip of the cap meets the bowl of the cap. So the bowl of the cap is actually overlapping the tip of the cap, because it doesn't look like this, because it doesn't look right? You can clearly see that bowl of the cap is overlapping. And then we have the head, which is under the cap, so the cap is overlapping the face. So there's a bunch of overlaps. So it's not just you're going in and you're drawing willy-nilly. You have to pay attention to these rules of perspective. All right. So what I'm gonna do now is that I'm gonna give you guys the assignment for this class, and I'm actually gonna show you what I want you to do for the assignment. It's not gonna be as complicated as this just yet. It's gonna be more of the overlap and the size and practicing seeing those elements in a subject while you draw them. So let's move on to that now. Okay guys, for the assignment for this class, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to give you a bunch of reference images, and I want you guys to sketch out the figures in these reference images, focusing on the rules of perspective we learned in this class, right? So I'm going to give you a quick example of what I want exactly for you guys to do in this class. So basically, I want you to draw the figure, but I want you to focus on the actual body. You don't have to draw like the clothing or the facial expressions and all those other details just yet. I just want you to draw the basic gesture of the body, right? Like this. So this is a guy skiing down a snowy slope, and what I'm doing is just I'm drawing the basic figure, basic silhouette without color in it in. Right? This is a quick crude example of what I want you guys to do. Right? And once you have this, what I want you to do is that I want you to draw the surface lines on the body, and I want you to use them to create that dimensionality and to make it feel more three-dimensional. I really want you guys to see how the importance of surface line could add three-dimensionality to the drawings. And while you do this, you'll also have to incorporate perspective and size, because as you see, when I draw the surface lines moving away, I draw them closer together, and when they are, let me draw it like this so it'll be more clearer. So we have this shape, right? A cylinder. So when I'm drawing the surface lines on this, and I start off here, and I start going towards the edge, the surface lines start to get closer and closer and closer towards each other because it's moving away, right? Same thing with if we're drawing it like this. So the closer the object is to you, the surface lines would be further apart, right? And the further away you get, they'll start to get closer and converging. Because this is further away and this is closer to you, it would have a wider space here and a closer space here. So pay attention to that while you're doing this exercise, guys. Make sure and do as much as you can. If you want to do more than the images I provided, you could always go on the internet and continue doing this exercise. The more you practice, the more you will understand it. So good luck with the assignment, guys, and see you in the next class.